I taught my best friend's daughter to call me Mama Vicky while she was grieving a miscarriage. When she confronted me, I screamed, "I raised your actual living child while you cried over babies that never existed." I just stared as the police took her wordless and shaking. That was 2 years ago. Yesterday, she sat outside my house in her car for over an hour without getting out. I needed to tell this story because I was watching it happen again, and apparently I was about as self-aware as a vampire in a mirror store. 2 years before, my best friend Megan had had her third miscarriage. We'd been joined at the hip since college, maid of honor at each other's weddings, godmothers to each other's kids, the kind of friends who could communicate entirely through office gifts. Watching her shatter had been like watching my own heart get put through a paper shredder. I'd had 3 pregnancies smoother than a buttered slip and slide while she'd lost baby after baby. When she couldn't get out of bed to care for her 6-year-old Zoe, I stepped up. I just wanted to help my soul sister through hell. I'd basically moved in. My husband Elliot had been supportive. Megan was family. I'd become super friend, dropping Zoe at school, hosting sleepovers, managing appointments. I'd documented everything in photos to show Megan her daughter was thriving. Saint Vicky, our friends had called me. Zoe had become my bonus kid, part of our quad squad. When Megan had texted, "I don't know what I'd do without you," I'd sent videos of Zoe laughing. It felt as natural as breathing. Red flag number 1. I'd loved being needed like that. It had filled a hole in me I hadn't known existed. Then the escalation had started creeping in like a Netflix subscription price hike, gradual but inevitable. I'd bought Zoe clothes, first necessities, then entire wardrobes. I'd redecorated her room to cheer her up. When Megan had tried resuming normal life, I'd suggested she needed more time. Still healing, bestie. Let me handle it. I'd created photo albums, Zoe's happy times, that had held over 12,000 pictures. 0 had included Megan. I'd told friends Megan was struggling more than she admits. Had started calling them all our 4 kids. Had listed myself as co-parent on school forms. Had bought Zoe a phone with my number saved as mom too. Here's where I'd become a walking red flag factory. I'd kept a hidden folder labeled concerns. Screenshots of Megan crying. Texts about feeling overwhelmed. I'd whispered to Zoe that mommy was sick, that my house was her safe space. I'd practiced conversations in the mirror like a psycho preparing for a TED Talk. Mommy loves you but can't care for you right now. The explosion had come when Megan discovered I'd taught Zoe to call me Mama Vicky. I'd choreographed that confrontation like a twisted ballet. That morning, I'd dressed Zoe in a mama's girl outfit, had taught her Mama Vicky keeps me safe, had timed it for post-therapy exhaustion, and had kept my phone recording. When Megan had confronted me, I detonated. "I've been more of a mother than you for months. While you cried over babies that never existed, I raised your actual living child." Calculated for maximum destruction. Had worked perfectly. When she'd ordered me out, I'd refused. Zoe had run in crying. I'd switched to comfort mode faster than a politician after elections. "It's okay, baby. Mama Vicky's here." Megan had tried intervening. Perfect. I'd called 911 with an Oscar-worthy performance mentioning mental health crisis, child present, concerned for safety. Police had arrived to find me calm, holding Zoe, while Megan had sobbed hysterically. I'd shown my documentation of proof I'd been the primary caregiver. Had mentioned therapy, medication, inability to cope. They'd suggested Megan let Zoe stay with me overnight. Next morning at 6 a.m., I'd filed for emergency custody. My petition had been a masterpiece of manipulation. The judge had granted temporary custody. I felt like I'd won the lottery and the Nobel Prize simultaneously. I'd enrolled Zoe at my kid's school. During supervised visits, I'd prep her. Visits with your biological mommy might feel confusing. I'd hug Megan at drop-offs, whispering poison wrapped in concern. "I'm giving her what you couldn't." The sickest part? I'd kept her baby teeth in my jewelry box like some dental trophy collection. I was telling you all of this because it was 2 years later when everything had started again. My adoption petition for Zoe had been pending. Zoe had called me mom and had asked when she could go home after visiting Megan. I'd posted our 4 blessings on Instagram while checking custody dockets obsessively. But here was the kicker. My depressed neighbor, a fellow mom, had made me her emergency contact. I had her key. Had started a new folder on her daughter called Skylar's Happy Times. I'd recognized the pattern like a horror movie protagonist hearing creaky stairs. I'd seen exactly what I was doing. The thing was, I hadn't wanted to stop. These mothers were drowning, and I was such an excellent swimmer. I closed my laptop with trembling hands. The confession video I'd been typing deleted with a single keystroke. Through the thin apartment wall, I could hear Sarah crying again. Skylar's mother, my new project. The sound made my fingers itch for my phone, for documentation, for evidence of her struggles. I forced myself to stand, to walk away from the wall, to not press my ear against it like some discount store therapist. The next morning arrived with all the subtlety of a car alarm at 3 a.m., a school drop-off, the parking lot battlefield where suburban warfare played out through aggressive parallel parking and passive-aggressive small talk. I maneuvered my minivan between a Tesla and a Prius, spotting Emma and Zoe in the back seat comparing friendship bracelets. My other 2 were already arguing about who got to hold the science project volcano. Then I saw her, Megan, standing by the entrance like she'd been waiting, her posture perfect, her smile practiced. 2 years of legal battles, and she still moved like a dancer who'd forgotten the steps but remembered the rhythm. Other parents noticed too, their conversations stuttering to stops, their eyes tracking between us like spectators at Wimbledon. I unbuckled the kids, keeping my movements steady, normal, nothing to see here, folks. Megan approached with the measured steps of someone who'd rehearsed this moment. She stopped just close enough that backing away would look like retreat, just far enough that moving closer would seem aggressive. She asked about missing items from Zoe's old room. Her voice carried perfectly across the parking lot, each word calibrated for maximum audience impact. I noticed her breathing, the careful inhale-exhale pattern I recognized from her old panic attacks, the ones I used to coach her through before I became the cause of them. My response came out sharper than intended, something about Zoe's things belonging where she lives now. The words hung in the air like a confession. Parents pretended to check phones while obviously listening. Mrs. Henderson from the PTA actually stopped walking mid-stride. Inside the school, Ms. Chen intercepted us both. The counselor needed coverage for her troubled kids session. Both Megan and I volunteered simultaneously, our voices overlapping in an awkward harmony. Ms. Chen's eyes darted between us like she was defusing a bomb with 2 red wires. I had a PTA meeting scheduled for the afternoon. Important stuff about the spring fundraiser, committee assignments, place, the kind of thing that kept me centered in the school's social ecosystem. But then my phone buzzed. Sarah. Skylar had an emergency doctor's appointment, and could I possibly help? The text included 3 crying emojis and an apology for asking. The calculation happened instantly. Help Sarah, miss the meeting, give Megan unopposed access to the other parents, or maintain my position. Let Sarah struggle alone, keep my influence intact. I watched Megan unconsciously touch her collarbone, right where she used to wear that silver necklace with Zoe's baby handprint, the one I'd bought her for her first Mother's Day, the one she'd thrown at me during our last face-to-face confrontation. I texted Sarah back. Of course I'd help. What were neighbors for? The PTA meeting would happen without me. Megan would have 2 hours to plant seeds, to water doubts, to cultivate the narrative she'd been building for 2 years. I knew this. I chose it anyway, because Sarah needed me, and being needed was my substance of choice. By the time I got to Sarah's apartment, she was a mess. Skylar had a fever, Sarah's ex was threatening to take this as evidence of neglect, and her car wouldn't start. I bundled them both into my minivan. Skylar curled in the back seat with a juice box and my emergency iPad. Sarah sat rigid in the passenger seat, apologizing every 30 seconds until I told her to stop. At the pediatrician's office, I handled the paperwork while Sarah held Skylar. I knew her insurance information, her medical history, Skylar's allergies. The receptionist assumed I was family. I didn't correct her. Sarah was too exhausted to notice. Meanwhile, back at school, Megan was having coffee with 3 administrators. I'd learned this later from the secretary, who mentioned it casually like she wasn't detonating a bomb in my lap. 2 years of documented concerns, she'd said. Behavioral patterns. The phrase would echo in my head for days. The afternoon exploded in 3 directions at once. Elliot texted about strange charges on our credit card, amounts I didn't recognize from stores I'd never visited. Zoe had a meltdown in art class, throwing paint and screaming about having 2 moms who both lied. And Sarah's ex-husband Jake materialized in the pediatrician's parking lot like a bad penny with a law degree. Jake's arrival sent Sarah into a panic spiral. He was demanding Skylar, waving custody papers that may or may not have been real, his voice carrying across the parking lot. Other parents watched from their cars, probably live tweeting the drama. I made a decision that felt right in the moment but would haunt me later. I called the police. 2 squad cars arrived within minutes. Jake's shouting about parental rights. Well, Vicky just speed ran the entire helpful friend to custody thief playbook faster than someone clearing their browser history when their spouse walks in. The scary part isn't that she knows exactly what she's doing with Sarah and Skylar. Sarah's crying. Skylar's clinging to her mom like a koala with abandonment issues. I stood between them, calm and reasonable, explaining the situation to the officers with a kind of measured tone that made me look like the only adult in the situation. The officers made Jake leave. Sarah sobbed with relief. Skylar finally stopped shaking. I looked like a hero, a protector, a good friend who'd stepped up in a crisis. What I didn't know was that Megan had predicted this exact scenario in her meeting with administrators. Pattern of involving authorities unnecessarily, she'd called it, creating drama to position herself as savior. Back at school for afternoon pickup, Megan was in the front office having what looked like a panic attack. Real or performed, I couldn't tell anymore. The secretary fussed over her. Other staff members gathered around, everyone so concerned about poor Megan who'd been through so much, who'd lost her daughter to her best friend, who was just trying to rebuild her life. Emma came out of school talking about Aunt Megan. Aunt Megan had visited her class. Aunt Megan had talked about confusing situations when families change. Aunt Megan had given everyone rainbow erasers and mentioned how sometimes having 2 mommies makes things harder for kids. My middle daughter, my sweet Emma, who still believed in fairies and fair play, was defending the woman trying to destroy our family. The parking lot exchange happened like a prisoner transfer. Zoe between us, Megan's car on one side, mine on the other. That's when I saw it. Her journal, leather-bound and thick, sitting on her passenger seat. 2 years of documentation, probably. Her own evidence file. The window was cracked. I could reach it, maybe, if I was quick, but parents were watching. Teachers were watching. Megan was watching. And the small smile on her face told me she knew exactly what I was thinking. I loaded Zoe into my car instead. Drove away with my hands steady on the wheel while my mind cataloged everything in that journal I couldn't touch. Legal evidence I couldn't access. Proof of her plans I couldn't expose. The playground incident happened 3 days later. I'd taken all 4 kids to the park, needing air, needing space, needing to watch them be normal kids for 5 minutes. Sarah and Skylar were there too. Sarah on a bench, exhausted, while Skylar played on the swings. I took photos, just happy kid moments, Skylar laughing, Zoe pushing her on the swing, normal stuff, except Sarah caught me. Her face went through several expressions, landing on something between confusion and concern. She asked why I was photographing her daughter. The question hung between us like a blade. Other parents looked over. I stammered something about memories, about capturing happy moments, about how fast kids grow up. Every word made it worse. Sarah gathered Skylar and left quickly. Later, I'd learned that Megan had warned her about documentation, about patterns, about how it starts with photos and ends with custody battles. My helpful neighbor was learning to see me as a threat. Dr. Morrison's office called the next week. Zoe's pediatrician needed updated medical history forms. Only her biological mother could provide certain information, insurance requirements, legal necessities. Megan would have to come in. Megan would have to sign. Megan would have to be acknowledged as the real mother. Elliot brought it up that night after the kids were in bed. He said my behavior reminded him of when my mother died, when I'd tried to raise my siblings at 15, when I'd become everyone's caretaker because it was easier than grieving. The comparison hit like a physical blow. Just like when you tried to parent your brothers, he said, you're doing it again. The school moms group chat became a digital battlefield. Every photo I posted of Zoe thriving got screenshotted, analyzed, dissected. She seems happy. Became code for, we're documenting this. My cheerful updates about our blended family were met with emoji responses that felt like loaded weapons. Megan sent an email to our building's community board, a concerned neighbor she called herself, warning about patterns of unwanted involvement, about boundaries, about the importance of protecting vulnerable families from well-meaning but ultimately harmful interference. She never used my name. She didn't have to. The college fund notifications started the next day. Automated emails about withdrawals from Zoe's education savings. Small amounts, nothing dramatic. Just enough to remind me that Megan's name was still on the account, that she still had rights, that biology trumped everything else in the eyes of the law. 3 nights without real sleep led to the grocery store incident. The clerk was slow. The line was long. Skylar was there with a babysitter, not Sarah, and something about that set me off. I snapped at the clerk about the wait, about the service, about everything and nothing. Someone filmed it. By evening, it was on the town Facebook page. Local mom loses it at grocery store. The comments were brutal. Linda called that night my sister, my rock, my constant support. Her husband had given her an ultimatum. He was tired of being dragged into my dramas. First the situation with our brothers after mom died, then various friend crises over the years. Now this. I believe you're trying to help, Linda said, her voice thick with tears, but I can't lose my marriage over this again. The dance class situation deteriorated subtly. Scheduling conflicts arose. Playdate invitations stopped coming. Whispers followed me through the studio. Custody situation. Poor Zoe. Two moms. The other mothers created distance with surgical precision, close enough to avoid seeming cruel, far enough to establish boundaries. The video surfaced during discovery. Megan's lawyer had found footage from 2 years ago. Me saying we discussed adoption. The audio was unclear, could mean anything, but the timestamp aligned with Megan's claim that she'd never agreed, that I'd assumed, that I'd taken her grief-stricken silence as consent. My best mom friend Jessica met me for coffee to explain why she couldn't testify on my behalf. She needed Megan's connection at Riverside Prep. Her daughter's future depended on it. She cried while explaining. I understood. I hated that I understood. Proving Megan had lied about one therapy appointment felt like a victory until the lawyers explained how it looked. Months of tracking her movements, documentation of her schedule, evidence of obsession, they called it. Being right made me look worse. The Starbucks photo captured me perfectly. Smiling after winning a minor custody motion. Coffee in hand, sun on my face, looking happy while the biological mother of my bonus daughter suffered. The caption on social media, celebrating while birth mother struggles for her child. The optics were devastating. The final realization hit during school pickup. Megan and I stood in our usual spots, maintaining our careful distance, and I understood with crystal clarity. Only one of us could stay in this community with our reputation intact. This town wasn't big enough for two mothers of Zoe. One of us would have to be the villain, and I was starting to realize it might be me. The realization settled over me like a weighted blanket as I drove home that afternoon. Megan had started dating my ex-brother-in-law Tom. I found out through Emma, who mentioned Uncle Tom picking up Aunt Megan for dinner. The casual bomb dropped between bites of mac and cheese sent my fork clattering to the plate. Tom and I had history. I'd helped him through his addiction recovery 5 years ago when my sister couldn't handle it anymore. I'd driven him to meetings, held his hand through withdrawals, kept his secrets from the family. Now he and Megan bonded over surviving my help, their shared experience creating genuine chemistry. At Emma's soccer game, I watched them arrive together, Megan quoting lines from Frozen 2, Zoe's favorite movie that I'd taught her every word to. School pickup transformed into strategic warfare. Each day brought new versions of events. I'd tell the crossing guard Megan had been aggressive. Megan would mention to the principal that I'd blocked her car. The truth lived somewhere in between, twisted by our mutual need to be the victim. Parents started avoiding the pickup line altogether, arranging carpools to dodge the daily drama. My lawyer discovered something during document review. Old text to Elliot from before Megan's first miscarriage. Messages where I'd called her unfit, jealous comments about her pregnancy when I'd wanted one more baby. The timestamp preceded any depression, any tragedy, any reasonable concern. The evaluation psychologist would see this, would understand the deeper jealousy that had existed long before I had any excuse to take her child. Zoe started repeating things, innocent parroting that cut deeper than accusations. She'd mentioned that Mama Megan said I was sick and needed help, that I was too tired to really be her mom. The words came out during bath time, between splashes, delivered with the casual cruelty only children could manage. I maintained my smile while shampoo burned my eyes, or maybe those were tears. The security system betrayed us both. Ring doorbell footage from neighbors became evidence neither of us expected. The videos showed me walking past Megan's house at odd hours, 2 a.m., 4 a.m., just walking, just looking, but the pattern was undeniable. Megan's lawyer submitted it as evidence of stalking. My lawyer countered with footage of Megan photographing my home. We'd both been documenting, circling each other like predators who'd forgotten who was hunting whom. Family court treated my careful documentation differently than I'd expected. The photo albums, the videos, the detailed notes, all reframed as evidence of parental alienation and obsessive behavior. The whole Sarah incident feels oddly convenient. How quickly she went from grateful to suspicious about those playground photos. Makes me wonder if Megan had been planting seeds of doubt way before that moment, preparing Sarah to see threats where there were none. The judge used words like concerning and inappropriate while reviewing my evidence. My proof of being a good mother transformed into exhibits of being a dangerous one. I discovered Megan's Amazon wish list by accident. Searching for birthday gift ideas for Zoe led me to her public lists. There it was, Zoe's real room. Furniture, decorations, bedding, everything needed to recreate the space I'd designed. The search history showed more. Autocomplete revealed she'd been researching reversing illegal adoption and biological mother rights. She'd been planning this recovery for years. Sarah's depression timeline emerged through social media investigation. Her Instagram told the story in filtered squares. Happy family photos that slowly disappeared. Gaps in posting that aligned with missed milestones. The metadata revealed when she'd stopped taking pictures altogether. I screenshotted everything, building my new file while telling myself it was different this time. I was protecting myself, not hunting. Dr. Klein, my therapist, received a subpoena, forced to testify about our sessions, about things I'd said in confidence. The phrase that damned me most, concerning statements regarding collecting children. I'd used that word, collecting, like they were stamps or ceramic cats instead of human beings. The court reporter typed it into the record while I watched my own words weaponized against me. My recording attempt at the next exchange failed spectacularly, phone storage full from thousands of photos of Zoe. The device flashed warnings while I frantically deleted memories to make space for evidence. Megan noticed my panic, my thumb swiping desperately across the screen. She smiled sadly, understanding exactly what was happening. I was erasing Zoe's childhood to save my motherhood. The scheduling conflict arose naturally. 3 p.m. pickup at 2 different schools. Emma at elementary, my older son at middle school across town. Usually manageable, but construction had created a 20-minute detour. I had to choose. Megan suggested she could get Zoe, help out given the situation. The trap was obvious but unavoidable. Refusing made me petty. Accepting gave her unsupervised access. I chose my biological children and hated myself for the priority. Patricia, the school nurse, withdrew her support after an anonymous complaint threatened her credentials. She'd been willing to testify about Megan's fitness, about concerning incidents from before, but she had her own children to protect, her own job to consider. She apologized with tears in her eyes, explaining how she couldn't risk her family for mine. I understood. Another ally lost to self-preservation. The matching bracelet caught my attention during a rainy Tuesday pickup. Megan wore it now. The mother-daughter said I'd bought for Zoe's birthday. The same lavender beads, the same silver heart charm. Even the perfume was familiar. She'd absorbed the aesthetic I'd created, claiming the visual language of motherhood I'd established. Zoe noticed too, touching Megan's wrist with recognition. Megan's settlement offer arrived through lawyers, supervised visits if I dropped the adoption petition, an admission that I'd misunderstood the situation. She'd crafted it carefully, reasonable enough that refusing would seem spiteful. The mediator pushed acceptance, talking about Zoe's need for birth-mother connection. My refusal got framed as ego over child welfare. Another point scored against me. Security footage revealed the truth about my proof video. The phone had auto-enhanced the recording, adjusting timestamps in the process. What I'd presented as evidence of Megan partying while Zoe was alone actually showed her at therapy. The metadata exposed my lie. Unintentional, but damning. Technology had betrayed my narrative, revealing desperate manipulation where I'd claimed concerned documentation. The voice memos changed everything. Neither of us knew Zoe had been recording on the phone I'd given her. Hours of audio captured over months. Her confusion, her tears, her questions about why she had two mommies who both lied. The recordings revealed what we'd both missed. A child drowning while two women fought over who could throw the life preserver. My proof of neglect crumbled under examination. The videos I thought showed abandonment actually captured Megan desperately trying to get help, calling doctors, begging for appointments, crying for support while managing grief. I'd filmed her lowest moments and misinterpreted them as negligence. The court saw a grieving mother doing her best, sabotaged by a friend who'd wanted her to fail. Elliot reached his breaking point during dinner. He announced his decision while the kids ate chicken nuggets, his voice carefully neutral. A temporary separation to protect our biological children from the scandal. The words landed like physical blows. I watched him pack while Emma asked why Daddy needed a vacation. His choice was logical. Distance himself from the chaos. Shield 3 children from one woman's obsession. But logic didn't soften the abandonment. Financial resources dwindled with his departure. Joint accounts became individual ones. Shared expenses became solo burdens. The legal bills mounted while my support system crumbled. I started selling jewelry, designer bags, anything to fund the continuing battle. Megan's GoFundMe meanwhile reached thousands. Getting my daughter back, resonating with strangers who saw a biological mother fighting for her child. I adapted Megan's tactics out of desperation. Befriended her lawyer's assistant at yoga class. Casual conversations about work stress, about difficult cases, about ethical dilemmas in family law. Information trickled out between warrior poses. Discovery dates, strategy sessions, weaknesses in my case they'd identified. I hated myself for the manipulation but couldn't stop. Survival instinct had replaced moral compass. The strip mall encounter happened by chance. Adjacent parking spaces at the Tuesday discount day. Sarah on her phone in the car next to mine, windows down, discussing Skylar's struggles with someone. Medication non-compliance, missed doses, behavioral issues at school. I pretended to take my own call while memorizing every detail. Her vulnerability broadcasted unknowingly while I gathered ammunition for a battle she didn't know existed. Cloud storage betrayed Megan's ignorance about technology. The voice memos from Zoe's phone had backed up automatically. I downloaded them before she realized. Gigabytes of evidence she didn't know existed. Legal admissibility was questionable, but the content was damning. Both our voices captured coaching Zoe, confusing her, using her as a proxy for our war. Derek emerged from Megan's past with his own accusations. Her ex-boyfriend claimed I'd tried to collect his daughter 2 years ago. Similar patterns, he said. Offers to help, documentation, slow invasion of parenting. His testimony felt rehearsed but effective. Fighting both Megan and Derek meant spreading resources thinner, missing crucial moments in my own children's lives. Emma's therapy appointment conflicted with an emergency hearing. The evaluation for her rising anxiety, scheduled months ago, couldn't be rescheduled. I chose court over my daughter's mental health. The therapist noted my absence in her report. Non-compliant parent entered my custody evaluation while I sat in a courtroom fighting for a child I'd stolen while neglecting the ones I'd born. Legal fees consumed everything. College funds drained first, then savings, then credit lines. Each motion cost thousands. Every response required billable hours. Megan's fundraiser grew while I sold my wedding ring. The irony wasn't lost. Funding my fight to keep her daughter with symbols of my own failed family. The ice cream shop confrontation traumatized everyone present. Zoe's favorite place became a battlefield. Raised voices, accusations, tears from both of us while teenagers working minimum wage tried to restore order. We were banned before the police arrived. Another safe space ruined, another memory tainted. Zoe would never eat mint chocolate chip without remembering her mother's screaming. My teaching position evaporated after concerned parents complained. Ongoing legal matters affecting judgment, they said. The replacement hired within days. Megan's cousin, qualified but convenient. Another chess piece positioned while I lost ground. Income gone, reputation shattered, purpose evaporating with each strategic loss. Night driving became my meditation. Past the house but never stopping. Glimpses through windows of the life I'd built being dismantled. Megan redecorating Zoe's room, removing every trace of my influence. New paint covering the murals we'd made together. Different furniture replacing pieces I'd chosen. Erasure in real time while I watched from the darkness. My mother's intervention came through tears. She begged me to let go before losing everything. I'd become someone she didn't recognize, she said. The daughter she'd raised wouldn't destroy families for pride. Wouldn't sacrifice 3 children for one. Wouldn't transform grief into cruelty. Her words echoed Elliot's, Linda's. Everyone who'd loved me before I'd become this version of myself. Diane's suspension resulted directly from my investigation into Sarah. My coworker friend had shared confidential information, thinking she was helping. Her daughter asked why Aunt Vicky made mommy cry. Innocent words that cut deep. I'd promised to fix it, to explain to administration, to make it right. Empty promises promises from someone who'd lost credibility everywhere. Her husband filed for separation within the week. Stress of association with unstable influences, he cited. Another marriage crumbling in my wake. Another family fractured by proximity to my chaos. I continued documenting Sarah despite knowing the destruction I was causing. The pattern was stronger than guilt, compulsion overriding compassion. Zoe had been recording everything on her phone this whole time. The way those recordings showed both women coaching her makes me wonder what else kids pick up that adults never realize they notice. Emma's question arrived during homework time. What if Zoe wanted to live with her real mom? The words hung between us while multiplication tables waited. I couldn't answer immediately. The truth stuck in my throat like swallowed glass. My daughter saw my hesitation, understood something fundamental had shifted. Even she was beginning to doubt my version of events. Public admission became strategy. I acknowledged overzealousness in helping, crafting careful statements about good intentions gone too far. Maintaining credibility about Megan's unfitness required admitting my own flaws. Partial truth in service of larger lies. The media coverage softened slightly. Two flawed women fighting over a child instead of villain versus victim. Zoe's voice memos revealed what I'd missed. Hours of crying I hadn't heard. Confusion I'd ignored. Questions about identity, about home, about why love felt like a battlefield. My selective attention had filtered out her pain, focusing only on moments that supported my narrative. The child I'd claimed to save had been drowning in our war. Emergency motions accelerated the timeline. Megan's lawyer filed to move the custody hearing up 3 months. My attorney was at his daughter's wedding, unable to respond immediately. The legal system's momentum favored the biological mother with increasing force. Each delay cost me ground I couldn't recover. Megan's motivation emerged during mediation. Years of subtle undermining had preceded the dramatic theft. Comments about her parenting, suggestions of inadequacy, slow erosion of confidence disguised as support. She wanted to be the mother she was meant to be, she said. The mother I'd never allowed her to become. Her rage mixed with genuine love created a formidable opponent. My own children became tools in the battle. I documented their words about missing Zoe, about wanting their sister back. Coached responses disguised as casual conversation. The honest mother I'd been died as strategic Vicky emerged, breaking promises to never lie to them, never use them, never put them in the middle. Every principle sacrificed for the war. Sarah's medication bottles caught my attention during homework help. Visible on the kitchen counter, prescription dates revealing patterns of non-compliance. I photographed them while helping Skylar with fractions. Evidence gathering had become automatic, happening without conscious thought. Building files on a woman who trusted me while her daughter struggled with math. Minor victories felt hollow. Preventing Megan's overnight visit triggered Zoe's sobbing at pickup. Both of us crying in our cars afterward, mirrors of maternal misery. Winning legal points while losing the child we claimed to protect. The judge noticed, commenting on the emotional toll visible in all parties. Megan's counterclaim gained traction. Emotional damages supported by evidence of systematic alienation. The collection pattern emerged clearly. Multiple children, vulnerable mothers, repeated behaviors. The judge's expression shifted with each revelation. Understanding dawned that this wasn't isolated incident but established pattern. Everything hinged on Dr. Wong's assessment. The child psychologist would evaluate Zoe's best interests, determine her primary attachment, recommend custody arrangements. Both Megan and I prepared our daughters for interviews. Careful coaching disguised as reassurance. The professional who'd see through manipulation, identify damage, decide futures based on broken presence. Tom's testimony leveraged our history. My past help with his addiction became evidence of my pattern. Emma asked why Uncle Tom was being mean, unable to understand adult betrayals. He detailed how I'd inserted myself into his recovery, taken control, made him dependent on my support. The same behaviors, he said, I'd shown with Megan. Teachers chose sides based on practical considerations. Whose children might receive preferential treatment, which mother would volunteer more, donate more, influence more. Professional relationships reduced to calculated alliances. Education became another battlefield where Zoe paid the price for adult wars. Court revelations shattered my assumptions. Biology carried weight I'd underestimated. Helping during depression didn't constitute grounds for adoption. Temporary care didn't equal permanent rights. The legal system favored birth mothers absent severe unfitness. My careful documentation proved only my interference, not her inadequacy. Catherine, the retired judge, provided procedural insights. My late mother's friend offered general advice about family court. She couldn't give specifics but suggested knowing my judge's tendencies. Research revealed a conservative bench, traditional values, biological preferences. The system I'd thought would protect Zoe's best interests defaulted to blood over bond. Her advice revealed Megan's preparation. 2 years of case building with a father's rights attorney who specialized in reversing questionable adoptions. Megan had been documenting too, waiting for the right moment to strike. Her own concerns folder thick with evidence of my obsession. We'd been circling each other, building arsenals, waiting for war. Catherine's advice about knowing my judge proved prophetic when I researched Judge Nathaniel Harrington. Conservative bench appointments, traditional family values, biological parent preference in custody disputes. The research painted a clear picture of how this would end. I spent hours reading his past decisions, each one reinforcing the reality that my carefully constructed case was built on sand. The revelation about Megan's preparation hit harder than expected. 2 years of methodical planning with a father's rights attorney who specialized in reversing questionable adoptions. While I'd been playing checkers, she'd been setting up chess pieces. Her own concerns folder existed, thick with evidence of my obsession. We'd been circling each other like sharks, both documenting, both waiting for the perfect moment to strike. Court-ordered disclosure arrived the following Monday. Boxes of documents, emails, text messages spanning years. My lawyer's assistant wheeled them into the conference room, her expression carefully neutral. Among the papers, I found Megan's private emails detailing her recovery narrative. 2 years of manipulation planning laid out in Gmail threads. Screenshots of my social media posts annotated with psychological terminology. References to parental alienation syndrome, obsessive behavior patterns, unhealthy attachment disorders. The evidence showed calculated patience. Megan had waited, gathered proof, built alliances while I'd grown comfortable in my stolen motherhood. Her emails to the attorney outlined specific triggers to watch for, behaviors to document, moments to capture. She'd known I'd eventually only overstep with Sarah, had predicted it with eerie accuracy. I presented the emails to my lawyer without gloating, maintaining composure despite the vindication. He reviewed them with growing concern, recognizing the double-edged nature of this discovery. Yes, it showed Megan's manipulation, but it also revealed two women who'd weaponized an innocent child in their war. The judge would see mutual destruction, not singular villainy. Megan's face during the next hearing revealed her shock at the exposure. Her revenge plan laid bare in court documents, every calculated move exposed. But the legal momentum had already shifted. The judge's expression showed exhaustion with both parties, disgust at the lengths we'd gone to claim victory. Neither of us looked like suitable mothers anymore. The courtroom for final custody determination felt like a coliseum. Teachers, neighbors, family members forced to choose sides publicly. The gallery divided into clear camps. Team Vicky on the left, Team Megan on the right. Zoe's grandparents sat in the middle row, positioned between both sections like referees at a boxing match. Their faces showed the toll of watching their granddaughter become a prize rather than a person. Both Megan and I showed our deterioration through physical tells. Her hands shook as she organized papers. My voice cracked during procedural responses. Hollow eyes met across the aisle, recognition of mutual destruction written in exhausted faces. We'd aged years and months, beauty and vitality sacrificed to legal warfare. The truth emerged through testimony after testimony. Witnesses painted a picture of two women who'd used Zoe as a proxy for their own needs. My need to be needed, Megan's need for revenge. The child's actual requirements had gotten lost in adult psychological warfare. Each revelation added another layer to the tragedy we'd created. Sarah's testimony arrived like a final nail. She spoke about my offers of help, the documentation, the patterns Megan had warned her about. Her voice trembled as she described her fear, her decision to protect her own custody by exposing mine. The words that destroyed me completely came at the end of her statement. She couldn't let me do to her what I'd done to Megan. The circle of destruction I'd created had turned back on itself. Judge Harrington ordered psychological evaluations for all parties, including Zoe. The court would determine the best custody arrangement based on professional assessment, not maternal warfare. Both Megan and I objected, united momentarily in our desire to avoid external scrutiny. Our protests were noted and overruled. Dr. Wong's report arrived sealed, authenticated despite both women's attempts to discredit it. The findings were read aloud in court, each word a judgment on our mutual failure. Both exhibited harmful parenting patterns. Both had prioritized personal needs over child welfare. Both required therapeutic intervention. The recommendation wasn't about winning, but healing. The report detailed Zoe's psychological state with clinical precision: anxiety disorders, attachment issues, identity confusion, trust problems that would require years of therapy to address. We'd broken her while claiming to save her. The child we'd fought over had become collateral damage in our war. My breakdown in court wasn't performative. The delusion shattered as Dr. Wong explained how I'd convinced myself that taking children from capable mothers was rescue rather than theft. The pattern stretched back further than Megan, further than Sarah. It started with my siblings after my mother died, continued through every friendship where I'd inserted myself as savior. The recognition of this compulsion felt like drowning in truth. Judge Harrington's ruling came down with the weight of Solomon's sword: immediate shared custody with mandatory co-parenting therapy. Both women would have equal time, equal rights, equal responsibilities. But the catch made it clear this wasn't victory for either side. We had to accept the shared arrangement or risk the judge awarding sole custody to the other party. Mutual destruction had led to forced cooperation. The ultimatum hung in the courtroom air: accept shared custody or lose everything. Watch the other woman potentially gain sole custody through refusal to cooperate. The judge had crafted a perfect trap, forcing us to choose between pride and parenthood. Zoe's needs would finally be prioritized, even if it meant neither mother got what she wanted. Agreement came simultaneously, both voices accepting terms neither wanted. Week on, week off custody established immediately. Therapy requirements non-negotiable. Co-parenting classes mandatory. Communication through court-approved app only. Every detail designed to force cooperation while preventing further warfare. The community division became permanent and visible. School events turned into careful navigation exercises. Birthday parties required strategic planning to avoid confrontations. Every gathering became a minefield of loyalties and betrayals. Some families chose Team Vicky, others Team Megan. Most just tried to protect their own children from the fallout. I began therapy with Dr. Jonathan Reeves, a specialist in obsessive behavioral patterns. The sessions revealed depths of compulsion I'd never acknowledged. My collection of photos remained, thousands of images of Zoe's childhood, but no more children to collect. The urge persisted though, lurking beneath surface healing. Some friends stayed, offering cautious support. Others disappeared, protecting themselves from association with scandal. My family began healing slowly, Elliot returning with conditions and boundaries. Emma's therapy showed progress. The other children adapted to their new reality with the resilience kids somehow possess. The restraining order preventing contact with Sarah and Skylar arrived without surprise. Legal documentation making explicit what should have been obvious. No contact, no help, no involvement. The pattern had to stop somewhere, and the court ensured it stopped with them. Sarah's family would remain intact, protected from my compulsive need to save. 6 months later, the new routine had solidified into reluctant functionality. Morning exchanges at the neutral location. Zoe transferring between cars with the practiced efficiency of a child who'd adapted to adult failures. She'd learned to navigate 2 homes, 2 sets of rules, 2 mothers who'd loved her wrong. Her therapy reports showed slow progress, healing measured in increments rather than milestones. I watched from my designated parking spot as Megan loaded Zoe's overnight bag into her car. The casual efficiency of it. The mundane reality of shared custody replacing the drama of our war. Zoe hugged me goodbye with the same enthusiasm she'd show Megan in 7 days. Equal affection carefully distributed to avoid triggering either mother's insecurities. The urge to document hit as I watched them drive away. To photograph the moment, to build evidence, to prepare for some future battle that might never come. My phone stayed in my pocket through conscious effort. Recovery meant choosing differently, even when every instinct screamed to repeat the pattern. Sarah passed by the coffee shop window where I sat after the exchange. She walked with Skylar, both laughing at something on Skylar's phone. They didn't see me, or pretended not to. The distance between us happiness was measured in more than feet. Legal orders and personal boundaries creating an uncrossable gulf. I was one depressed neighbor away from relapsing, but choosing recovery for my family's sake. The notebook in my purse contained lists instead of evidence now. Therapy appointments, Emma's recital dates, grocery lists, normal mother activities replacing obsessive documentation. But sometimes, late at night, I'd find myself scrolling through the thousands of photos still on my phone. Zoe's childhood captured in obsessive detail. Proof of love transformed into evidence of harm. Megan and I had learned to co-parent through necessity rather than desire. Brief exchanges of necessary information, medical updates, school performance reports. The woman who'd been my best friend had become a business partner in raising the child we'd both damaged while claiming to protect. We'd never be friends again, but we could be functional co-parents. For Zoe, we had to be. The story I'd started to type months ago remained deleted. The confession video never made. Some truths were better lived than told. The pattern of collecting children had been broken by exposure and consequence, but the urge remained. It would always remain. Recovery meant daily choices to resist compulsion, to recognize the signs, to choose differently. I closed my laptop and prepared for the week ahead. 3 children who needed their mother present and healing. A marriage rebuilding on fractured foundation. A community that would always remember what I'd done. And somewhere across town, a little girl learning to thrive despite 2 mothers who'd loved her wrong, teaching us both that sometimes the best thing you can do for a child is stop fighting over them and start fighting for them instead. The parking lot emptied as other parents completed their exchanges. Another Sunday morning in the careful choreography of shared custody. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new opportunities to choose better. The collection had ended. The healing had barely begun. But for the first time in years, I was just a mother. Not super, not savior. Just a flawed woman learning to love without consuming, to help without controlling, to let go without losing everything. Subscribe for more YouTube content just like this. If you made it this far, then drop a comment below. The way she describes still having thousands of photos on her phone but not looking at them. Who keeps that much evidence of their own obsession?